in Mourne, in the county Galway, one pleasant evening in the month of May, I spied a damsel, she was young and handsome.
Ah, would you look at her? A slip of a thing. Blossoms and ribbons in her hair. And she's wearing that shawly thing. Poncho, she called it. Thought it made her look like the blonde lass from ABBA. Worked on it for hours when she should have been at her school books. And Ma didn't think much of it, like. All that work, and it won't keep you warm. A floppy thing like that.
And around her shoulder.
Ah, sure, she's lovely anyways. More than enough to warm an old fella's heart. And more than enough to make a young fella's heart start racing. Beating faster than a pig's brought into the yard for the kill. She thought we hadn't noticed them, but of course we had. How her cheeks glowed and her hands shook, and how his eyes never once left her face as he played. Ah, he wasn't bad as young players go. But together now, together, his tunes and her voice, they made something more. Together, the music they made was, well, I suppose you'd call it magical. She thought we didn't know the shape of it. Of course we did. Weren't we young ourselves once? And with eyes only for each other. Sure, we could barely stop our hands reaching out to touch one another. And then, all of a sudden, he told her that he couldn't stay any longer. Had a big opportunity to meet an agent or a producer, was it? Some kind of a fella anyway. A chance to take his music on a bit. Make a career out of it, like. Why it meant going all the way to America, I could never fathom. It pained him. You could see that, as plain as the nose on your face. It pained him to leave her almost as soon as he'd met her. Pained me too, I'm telling you. Brought to mind how hard it was to leave her ma when the two of us was young, and me taking that job in London, so as I'd see her only once in a long while. And that was only London. America now. Jesus, that would have broken my heart. Still, he was a decent enough fella. Told her he'd be back in the autumn. Told her that her singing had opened his eyes and ears, and that together they'd a future, making music and, well, what have you. There were tears, of course, fond farewells, reassurances, promises.
With a ribbon on it.
She wasn't herself for a few weeks. Cheeks as pale as the milk and the churn when she came down for the breakfast. Barely touched the food. Argued with her ma. What was the point, she said, when her future was going to be with him and in music? But she calmed down.
Says she, come in, sir, and meet my father.
The exams came and they went, and the summer passed. And soon enough, she was off to college with the other girls. And boys, there were too. Then came November, and true to his word, a musician fella's back. Tá en Jory Ashley, the wanderer returns. True to his promise, He'd kept her close in his heart despite the ocean between them. Couldn't put the image of her out of his mind, he told her. A voice out of his ears. She smiled, was polite enough, alright. Asked about America. But sure, the magic was gone. Her heart wasn't in it. And he wasn't in her heart.
Says she goodbye, sir, as she cried, and me heart remained with the Galway Shawl. Mary, this London's a wonderful sight, with the people here working by day and by night. They don't sow potatoes, nor barley, nor wheat, but there's gangs of them digging for gold in the street.
Do you remember, Mary? Up in the mountains we were, sleeve brownian, walking, talking, paying no attention to where we were. And then the rain came down, no warning, like sharp spikes of slate, and we got soaked. We ran for shelter by the wall, slipping and sliding in those old worn out boots of yours. That's when I knew I was caught. Caught by your laughter and the open joy in your face as you shook the rain out of your tangled dark hair, only for it to run down your cheeks. I can't believe what I'm doing for a living, Mary. Working for some debt recovery firm, so I am. I'm a bailiff, for God's sake. Went to see some old fella up in Camden today. Debt's up to his armpits. Eyes empty, hollowed out. He was a gambler, just like my dad. Betrayed by the big lose, but sure of the big win. Pleaded with us not to take anything. Just so long as we would give him time, he'd pay it back. It was desperate, all right. Nothing of value to take anyway. All being pawned, I suppose. I don't think I'll ever forgive my dad for losing the farm. So there was nothing for me to do but head over to London like some old Egypt and look for the hidden gold underneath all the dust and the smoke and the grit. I had so many plans for us, Mary. You and me and the farm. It's hard to think about the future now. But I'm coming back. I'm coming back to Newry, Mary. With that London gold in my fist, so I am.
You remember young Peter?
It's funny how you're in my head all the time. Talking to me. Encouraging, soothing, teasing. And I talk back, so I do. We have these long, wild conversations, and we talk about, well, everything. What's that about? Are you my conscience? My echo in the loneliness? Your voice helps me feel less alone. I know you can't leave your ma right now, but I miss you, my Mary of the Mourne. I need your face, your soothing presence. I need you, Mary. You must know that still.
Dark morn sweeps down to the sea.
Oh, guess who I saw yesterday? Diddy McLaren from Mayo Bridge. The big man. On the Strand. He was in a police uniform and loving it. Directing the traffic in the madness. Standing there like some crazed conductor. Then doesn't he leave them all to themselves and then crosses the road to have a wee chat with me by the traffic light, so he does. Look, it was great, so it was. Talking to someone from home. It made all the grime and the hardness of the city melt away. And if you looked hard enough, I swear you could even see the mountains in the distance. He seemed content. Happy even. He invited me to his local. I might just go along. Do you remember that journey back from the mountains? We were soaked and cold too. I wrapped my jacket round you and you smiled. So there you were. Hair sodden, mud streaked all over your boots, and layers of clothing. But that bus driver couldn't keep his eyes off you. You didn't notice. There's no vanity in you, Mary. Home. That's you, Mary. I'm coming back. 6 months, maybe a year, but I am coming back. I promise.
Where the mountains of Mourne sweep down to the sea. Over the hills, my bonny Irish lass, come over the hills to your darling. You choose a rose, love, and I'll make a vow.
The guitarist who plays here, he asked me about you. He said, "Who is that lad whose face lit up when I started playing Red as the Rose? The one with the faraway look in his eyes. There were tears there too. I'd say he was somewhere else for sure." But you're something of a mystery man, aren't you, Tom? An old fella we took in a few months ago. Rescued you from a life being lived under the bridge by the railway. Any records, the papers that we might tell us who you are have disappeared long ago with your memory. You could be 70, or even 60, or even younger. You rarely speak. You have no visitors. You don't seem to want to make any friends. Sure, why would you? You've probably lived long enough without them. The care here is good, but your dementia stops you from noticing. You sit where you're asked. You eat what you're given, and you look at the TV without really watching. The expression on your face rarely changes, until once a week in this group where we play the old Irish tunes. Why does Red as the Rose mean so much to you? Because this is your song, isn't it, Tom? This is where life makes sense for you. And yet the hearing of it seems to release a pain within you that goes beyond sadness. Who is your rose, Tommy? You remember her, don't you? In the woods where you met. Did you promise to love each other forever? Did the need to leave Ireland to find work smash those dreams into a million pieces? You've never forgotten her, have you? I can tell. Did you have a photo of her in your pocket? One you carried with you as you moved from site to site, from one set of digs to the other?
It's not for the parting with my sister.
The song bids her to come over the hill, and I think she does, if only in your mind. You bonny Irish lass, who floats in on the notes of the song and wraps herself around you, a bit like a comforting blanket. The song takes you back to those woods in the moonlight, doesn't it? Where she came all those years ago, where she came because she loved you. And you've never forgotten what that love did to you. Was it her love that kept you going, allowed you to feel that you were worth something throughout those hard years? When the gang of men swore at you, when the icy wind bit through you, and your pockets were empty.
It's not for the grief of my mother. It's all for the love of my bonny.
Because love doesn't just comfort us, does it? It lights up something inside us. It gives us a dignity too. And the hearing of that song reminds you of her love. Because once invited into our hearts, love stays there until we choose to banish it. We forget other things, but never that someone loved us. Am I right, Tom? If the fella asks again, will I tell him that the song reminds you that someone once loved you deeply? And isn't that, above all else, what we need to know as we approach the end of our lives? That someone once loved us.